Welcome! Today is a bit of a different video, a bit of a personal update about me, myself. So straight off, I'll let you know that the title and the thumbnail are not clickbait. I have actually now been diagnosed as blind, like legally blind. So what's happened? Well, in the early days of this channel, I made a video titled Retinitis Pigmentosa and Me. It's because I have an eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa. It is a genetic degenerative eye condition with no cure that impacts the retina, as you can imagine from the name of it, with this dark pigment, as you can imagine from the name of it. And what this does is it inhibits over time my peripheral vision, as well as completely eradicates any ability for me to see in low levels of light, so in the nighttime. I talked a little bit more about sort of how I came to be diagnosed with this in that video, but also in that video I spoke about it quite lightly because it hadn't really impacted me too much. The two things that I complained about the most were the fact that I couldn't drive anymore. It had impacted me to that level, but also that I trip over wet floor signs like nobody's business. I still do, by the way. It's just that now it's no longer just wet floor signs, it's also children, dogs, cats, pretty much all small animals, and any adult below 5 foot. You're all in danger from me. Basically what happened was, at that time it hadn't impacted me that much. Flash forward to sort of 2020 to 2021, I have just moved up to where I live now, and we then get into lockdown, and it's over the course of lockdown that I start to notice that I go from being able to see sort of here, maybe a bit wider, and then over time, let me see, I can just about see my right hand. Oh wait, there's my left hand, hang on. So it's about there. That's about the width I can see. And so after moving, I hadn't seen an ophthalmologist for absolutely ages, because sorting out anything medical and seeing specialists and whatnot is a challenge. Not so much a challenge, it's just off-putting. You kind of save it for emergencies only these days in the UK. But eventually I do go to see a doctor, do get put through to an ophthalmologist, and I go down to see them in August, and then I missed an appointment in September because I have to rely on public transport and I messed up that. And then I finally saw an ophthalmologist at the end of September, and I get a letter through in the beginning of October saying that I'm going to be registered as severely partially sighted, which in brackets is blind. Fun fact, what most people think of as blind, and indeed what I thought of as blind, actually is only about 1 in 20 people who are registered blind. Most people who are blind can still see something. I can still see pretty well in the central vision. I can see the whole camera and a little bit of that light there, and I've got some sort of light coming from here. I also found out in October, no, I will be getting or have already started to develop cataracts. So that's going to mess up my central vision sooner or later, but at least they can do surgeries about that. And according to what the guy I spoke to last time said, he did like 6 of them the day before, and it's fairly routine. As well as that, on my birthday, I actually got a call from my county's Association for the Blind, who are the people who will officially register me, and I'm now waiting for a letter through from them so I can get, say, cheaper train travel and all the rest. And one thing that came up in that conversation was that there is something called Charles Bonnet syndrome. I think that's syndrome. Charles Bonnet something. I'll put it up on the screen. And what this is because my vision on the outside is so limited, and my brain is still expecting there to be something there. What can happen, it hasn't happened to me yet, but what can happen are severe hallucinations where my brain just starts making up stuff to, as she put it, entertain itself. And apparently they can be really vivid and very, very realistic. Like she describes someone who sees a train going through their conservatory, for example, on the regular, and someone who saw that their entire downstairs was flooded when it wasn't. So that's another thing to look forward to. Now, what does this mean for like me in terms of lifestyle? The trickiest thing for me is large crowds. Usually I can get out and about no problem in society. I can go out onto the streets in most towns and I can sort of look ahead, make an assessment of what's coming up, sort of see who's walking from where to where, and then I can just kind of map it out as I go. However, when the crowds get really large, like one time when I visited Camden recently, it gets a lot trickier and I start getting in people's way, they start getting in my way, and I just feel kind of invalidated as a person. And this is something that I'm kind of struggling with. I mean, as you know, I went to the Alien Ant Farm concert very recently, and that was fine. It was fine. But my family were out with me as well, and they made this whole kind of atmosphere because they care, ultimately, where I just felt like I was being looked after a lot more than I used to be, and that I'm used to. The thing basically that I'm struggling with the most is accepting that I have a disability. Like, I accept it fundamentally, like at a conscious level, an academic level, say, as a point of fact, but seeing that as part of my identity has still been quite tough all this time. And now having this official diagnosis to say that I am limited in such a way that I am now officially blind is really tricky. And so a lot of people with my eye condition do get seeing eye dogs. Problem is, I'm not a big fan of dogs. I find them too needy. They're friendly. I like seeing them. I like seeing other people's dogs, but I couldn't picture myself looking after one. But the thing that everyone else does who doesn't have a dog is they use a cane. And I've had so many people at this point suggest to me that I need a cane. I've seen a lot of forums and Reddit posts of people saying that they went through the same thing. They couldn't agree with this part of their identity. They resisted getting a cane, and then eventually they accepted it, and it made their lives easier. So at some point, maybe I will. But right now, I'm finding it very hard to come to terms with. That one aspect. It's not like this has depressed me in any kind of way. I am one of these people who just takes everything as it comes. But I'm now on the wrong end of my 30s to have these kind of things like coming apart, and it makes me feel old, even though, as I mentioned earlier, there are people who reach my level of blindness by the time they're 20. I guess it's a case of count my blessings. It's just a bit tough, and I wanted to just mention this as an update, mostly for people who might be going through the same thing, but also, you know, there might be times when you're watching a video of me. I noticed this when I was editing that Alien Ant Farm video, and I shot the clip of me talking at one of the train stations, and my eyes get incredibly dilated in low levels of light because they're looking for more light than what most people are looking for. Actually, my eyes are just generally more dilated than most people, and I was worried that people are going to think that I'm on something, that I'm not sober, when that's actually not the case. I actually don't touch anything these days. You know, I find myself wanting to make these kind of excuses for how it might make me appear. This is just an update of what's going on with me these days, how it might impact some things. But generally, I should mention right now, I'm not going to make this like a part of my channel. I'm not going to give continuous updates of what it's like to do this as a blind person, this as a blind person. I struggle enough as it is with like the identity of it. It's just a fact at this point, I guess. Something that I feel kind of detached from. And yes, I want to kind of reach out, I guess, to let other people know that, you know, we're out there. But, you know, there was actually a guy who went on like Jackmate's podcast, for example, and he had literally my eye condition. There are people in the Paralympics with my eye condition. It's not like I need to say this, but if you're near the beginning of this, if you've just found out you've been diagnosed with this, if you've reached a point that I have, regardless of your age, and you're struggling with, you know, coming to terms with it in some way like I am, it's like I've come to terms with it. I just don't want to outwardly project myself. Oh, I'm a blind person. I'm not going to make a whole series of videos about me being blind, so feel free to like this video. But, you know, if you're thinking you want to follow me to see how I do as a blind person, probably not the channel for that. That being said, if you like retro gaming or music discussion, funnily enough, I don't need too much sight to do both those things. There are a couple of times in some games, like I think Action Fighter, where something will come from the side of the screen, I might not react to it as quickly as maybe other people would. Even on like standard size chess sets, I can't see the entire chess set all at once, like on a tournament sized board. So, you know, it does impact in some ways. But if you're into any of my other content, then please do subscribe. Just not for blindness reasons, you know. And I am actually very interested in hearing from other people who go through this condition or other sight conditions. But yeah, till I see you again, have a good one.